married or in a committed relationship looking for real advice on having love and enriching your relationship? You are in the right place. Welcome to The Couples Expert with Stuart Fensterheim.
Hello and welcome to the Couples Expert Podcast. This is Stuart Fensterheim. Thank you once again for joining me on this podcast. This is an episode that I've been thinking about doing for quite some time. When I think about our sexual relationship that we have with our partners, we typically, when we talk about that as counselors, we talk about it with regard to the emotional connection that we have with our partners. And for many, many years, what we talked about is that if things outside the bedroom were doing well, things in the bedroom just took care of themselves. But that negates a very important issue, is that sometimes the passion that we feel for our partners are very much alive. But as time goes on, as we age, what doesn't always stay secure is how our body works. Our bodies sometimes betray us. And so often what ends up happening is two people don't talk about the fact that there are changes going on in your body physiologically, chemically, and in many different ways. And what ends up happening is a lot of doubt and insecurity and a question on whether or not your partner is truly there for you, even if you have a very close, intimate, emotionally connected relationship, you still have all of those questions. And for the sake of this episode, I am going to assume that the two of you have worked through a lot of your issues and that the two of you have a very secure, stable, emotionally connected relationship. For the sake of this episode as well, I'm going to assume that we started our marriage, our relationship, as two people passionate about each other, and that you had an incredibly active sex life. When I hear people talking about the early times in the marriage, people would always talk about it as we couldn't keep our hands off each other, that we were having sex almost every single day. And now they've come to see me at times because their sex life is nil. They haven't even touched each other in a very long time. And they have a sex life with a frequency of maybe once every 3 to 4 months, if not longer. And when I begin to do some of my own exploration about this, what I realize is part of the challenge that they have is they don't talk about it. And that life and aging has taken on a shape for them that has gotten in the way of them having an active, satisfying sexual relationship. And because they don't understand what to do about it and don't understand why it's happened, they make a choice to pull back physically, and they're barely touching each other. There's nothing sadder than that. So that is part of my desire today to talk about sex and aging has to do with couples who really truly love each other, but have allowed some of their confusion to get in the way of them having a passionate, erotic sex life. And today's discussion, hopefully, will have many of you returning to having an active sexual relationship, active being defined by the two of you. So welcome to the Couples Expert Podcast. Welcome to this episode of Sex and Aging and how to keep your passion alive through the years. So the first part of this, I think, is to really understand that early in your marriage, when you first get together, sex is just wonderful. We typically are experimenting. Some of you have had a sexual partner previously, many sexual partners. Some of you, this is the first sexual partner that you've had. And what ends up happening is that you try to do many different things. And then there's also all the literature out there. We have all the things that came up recently with 50 Shades of Grey, so people are doing soft bondage, and you're trying these things. You're trying things, you're doing vaginal sex, you're having anal sex perhaps, you're having oral sex, you're trying role-playing, because role-playing seems to be a lot of fun. All of these sexual experiences, and you can do all of this. You can do pretty much anything that you want because it's just the two of you. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful to be able to walk around your house naked, and if the mood hits you, then you end up making love right there on the floor. Or your wife is cooking and you end up saying, let's put dinner aside, and you pick her up, put her on the counter, and the two of you are making love right there in the kitchen. All of these types of experiences happen to folks early in your marriage. It is wonderful. You're making love. You're not just screwing. You're making love to your partner. You have a new type of relationship, perhaps, when you get married. That commitment is strong and the love is strong, and it feels so wonderful. And then life begins to happen. There's schedules, there's work conflicts, there's commitments, there's traveling, and all of these things start getting in the way of your physical relationship. You get tired, you're stressed out, you come home a little bit aggravated, and before you know it, you're just not that in the mood. And so often, the problem here is people don't realize how dangerous that is. That what you're beginning to do is pull away physically from your partner. So you might talk about that. And then before you know it, you're engaging sexually. Again, you've made it more important. You've created a relationship with your partner which has it being much more fitting in to your regular life, and things just normalize. It's not as passionate, perhaps, as the very beginning, but it's still incredibly passionate. You are really turned on by each other, and your sex life really becomes part of your life. It's wonderful. It's working. The frequency for most couples, on an average, is anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week. And that's what maintains. And then ultimately, what generally happens for lots and lots of couples is you decide it's time to have a baby. And then children start coming. And there's some things that sometimes come up. And I've had a number of couples recently come into my office who had this very challenge. What ends up happening is that there's a separation that occurs between husband and wife because there's now this new life. There's something in the home that is something the two of you created, and you're both so excited about it. But it starts taking up a lot of time and a lot of energy. And you're exhausted. Both of you are. And you begin to make a decision, which is a dangerous one, that ends up with the two of you choosing to put aside some of your physical relationship because, number one, quite often there is a reclining of sexual desire from the woman, and unless the two of you talk about what that means to both of you, it can get in the way of you having a very fulfilling physical relationship. And so many couples, what ends up happening is they start pulling away physically. And that means the cuddling's not happening. The holding hands isn't happening. And you're just basically going through the day, doing your routine, trying to just get by. and the relationship sometimes gets stuck there. If the two of you have a strong relationship, and as I said in the beginning, that's what we're assuming here, the likelihood that you've had some conversations and your physical relationship starts coming back. And you're now working at this at a regular pace with the concept that we're not going to allow the children to get in the way of our love that we have for each other and the touching that we do. And for many couples, that takes a number of years till you really settle in there. And then before you know it, at a blink of an eye, aging comes in. You're starting to age. You begin to recognize that your body is not doing as well as it once did. And now, I'm not talking sexually yet. I'm talking about physically. Everything is sort of not working so well. You're more tired. You get more frustrated. You have more pressures, work demands. All of these things are going on, and both of you have a clear, deep feeling and understanding of one another. So it doesn't create a stress on the relationship, but you're still not being as physical with one another as you once were. That's the problem. Because the non-sexual touch quite often goes away. And you're not cuddling. And you're not making out. And sometimes issues of sleep come into play. And I've had a lot of couples that I have seen recently that have said, you know, we stopped sleeping in the same room because my partner snores. So you have these kinds of issues that creep in. And you just accept that that's part of what life is. You don't make it important enough to say, I don't want us sleeping separately. Let's do whatever it takes so we can go to sleep at the same time, in the same bed, in the same room, because I miss you too much when you're not there. I didn't get married to have a relationship that is turning more like roommates than having a passionate desire for one another that I can't keep my hands off of you. And that even if we're tired, when we lie down in bed, at least we can hold each other. I can reach my arm over, hold your hand while we're going to sleep. I feel that physical connection with you. That is really, really important, guys and ladies. This episode is sponsored by Stuart's Daily Notes. Stuart's Daily Notes is an email newsletter from the couples expert that will improve your marriage in 5 minutes a day. Small things can have a big impact on your relationship over time. Sign up for Stuart's Daily Notes. It's a resource of tools, videos, exercises, and more. All done by the couples expert, Stuart Fensterheim, with 30 years of clinical experience working with couples. Delivered straight to your inbox. The best part about it, it's free. Sign up today. Go to www.thecouplesexperts.com and change your relationship every single day of your life together. Now back to the episode. One of the things through the years that we always have to keep in mind is that our sex life is like other types of activities that we have. If we don't use it, we lose it. If we're not being intimate and setting time aside to be sexual with one another, it will stop being a priority in our schedules and everything else will fill up a void. We have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. If we allow other things to interfere with the time that we might have to be intimate with our partners, it will get in the way. I want to send a very clear message about sexuality and age. There is no age where sex should stop. When we get older, our sex life should be better. Quality becomes more important than quantity. And I think that's one of the things I want to make sure that you walk away with in listening to this podcast. A number is just a number. How many times you're doing it shouldn't be what you're measuring. You should be measuring that as time goes on, as we age, it's more about what does it feel like when we're doing it? What does it feel like when we're making love? If we're doing a quickie, that's okay. But how many times are the quickies the norm? And how many times do you take time, spending time together, holding each other, cuddling, spending that energy, the time when you're awake and are not overly tired? And do you make that a priority? Does everything else become more important to you? And I think that as we age, we have to really measure our energy level. I think this is one of the areas that most people don't talk enough about, that we only have so much energy. And if we put our energy into our children, into our jobs, into our hobbies, and we come home totally wiped out and exhausted, we don't have any energy left. I'll tell you a funny story. My wife and I have a fairly active sex life. I'm not bragging. I feel good about that. But so often what ends up happening to us as we've gotten older is we go and we sit down and we say, all right, tonight I want to make sure that we spend enough time so we can make love. And we're sitting down and we're watching the news. And before you know it, I think you know what's coming. The two of us have fallen asleep. We've just passed out. Watching the news, 10 o'clock comes about, 9:30 comes about. Before you know it, and my wife's saying, get up, it's time for bed. And we crawl into bed, and what do? We go to sleep. We're tired. Our schedule that we need to use to have an active sex life has to change so that we have scheduled sex at times. Now, what I mean by that is scheduling sex doesn't mean that at 6:03 we're going in the room and you taking off my clothes and I take off your clothes at around 6:05. What it means is we're going to have a date night where we start the evening early. We'll meet for at happy hour, which is about 4 or 5 o'clock. And we're going to have a great, great time. And more often than not, we end up making love and have plenty of energy. Now, why is that? Because the foreplay is there. The energy to turn each other on for the evening gets us excited. Not about making love, although that's there, but excited to spend time together, sharing and putting the energy in and being newlyweds again, where the energy is about flirtatious. And we now have things that are with us all the time, our cell phones, where you can send instant messages. You can send a flirty text. How many of you do that with your partners? I hope a lot of you do. And as we age, these types of things are more critical to making sure that the two of you turn each other on, not in crude ways. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about turning each other on in loving ways, telling each other how exciting it is, and being so vulnerable with your partner that you can say things like, when I hold your hand, it's electric. Some of you are not good at words like that, so you can find things that do it for you. The concept here is that as we age, our sex life has to be more deliberate. We have to begin to do the things that we know that will make sure that our partner knows that they are still desired by you. We forget that because of the humdrum of our world and our life and our jobs. We need our partners telling us that all the time. And your job in a marriage is making sure your partner knows that they turn you on. And so often we forget how critical it is to say those words. My saving grace growing up in this concept of, does your sex life end after a while? When I turn 50 or 60 or 70, am I still going to need my sex life? Or do I just have to accept that it's just going to stop? One of the benefits of having parents who get divorced, and there's a lot of problems with parents who get divorced. As kids, no one wants that. Is that if your parents end up divorced, you have a concept of them dating. And you begin to recognize that our romantic life, our romance, doesn't just go away. And seeing two people having an intimate life, and if you come from a family where it's talked about, that affection is demonstrated, that is a saving grace to begin to recognize that as you get older, passion doesn't stop. Two people can be passionate for the rest of their lives, for all of their days, as long as you work through the issues and communicate about the things that go on. I have a client who told me this story that we were sort of laughing about it, but I recognized that what this client shared with me really was such a wonderful thing for them, because what it was is this client was looking for something. The parents were divorced. Mom now was remarried. And the child went through the bedroom looking for a piece of paper to write a note for school, and opened the bedroom door to find their mother's dildo. Now think about this. You're in your parents' room or your mom's room with your stepdad, and you find a sex toy. And if you're a teenager, which this person was, it could be really scary. But what it said to this person, both that having to sort of first make sense of the fact that your parents actually have a sex life, was a recognition that playfulness was something that these two people did, and it just was able to help this person look at their world, look at their life, look at their future as intimacy being something that can be lifelong lasting. And what I want to share with all of you listening in have you really truly believe. And some of you who are my age, around 60, I think 60s is the new 40 for me, meaning that I used to be 60 was really old, and now it's just quite young, is that your sex life will continue to the day you die. And my hope is I will make love to my wife on the day that I die. I would like to make love at around the time that I die. Wouldn't that be great? One of the things to keep in mind is that your biggest sex organ is your brain. And what sometimes sustains couples who have physical challenges, we have a lot of issues that come up for us as we age that sometimes interfere with our ability to have an active sex life in our usual, typical way that we always had. And I have couples sometimes coming into my office who say they haven't had sex in months because of painful intercourse, because of dryness. And one of the things that when I talk with them, I learn is that they've been mishandled, that people have basically said to them, you just have to live with this. And who wants to live with sex if it's painful? And so often I have people who won't even tell their partners that it's painful because they don't think that there's anything to be done. And I want to make sure that I get out to all of you listening one suggestion. If you're struggling with painful irritation when you're making love, one of the techniques that sometimes helps a lot, there's lots of different ways to handle this, but one I want you to try if you've run out of things is coconut oil. Coconut oil that you cook with becomes a very fun kind of thing to do during foreplay. What you do is you take coconut oil and you freeze it in the refrigerator. You don't freeze it, but you chill it. When you chill it, it hardens. And you can imagine the fun that you can have inserting this, guys, into your partner's female parts, their vagina. And you play with the coconut oil and you stroke and you circle and you do all the things necessary that'll really turn your partner on. And you put the hardened coconut oil as deep as you can. And then when you have intercourse, it doesn't hurt so much. It's an amazing thing. I hope this helps some of you. And if it does, please let me know. This really has been a godsend to so many couples. And these are the discussions that two people need to be having. You don't have to live with your sex life hurting you. As you age, when we deal with things like erectile dysfunction, utilizing chemicals like Viagra and things like that, those are really good tools. But it shouldn't just be, that's it. That's all we do is just pop a pill. You have to have an open dialogue with your partner. You have to be able to share with your partner what's going on for you physically, and there's such a psychological component as we age when sex doesn't happen so easily. And there are so many couples there that have mismanaged this. And I hear story after story sometimes of partners who have turned to their male partners who are struggling with keeping a hard erection and have said very humiliating things to their partner. And it has created major problems. Talking about what it feels like to not be able to get an erection is a very valid and important dialogue to have with your partner. Both of you need to come at this as best friends. One of the things, though, and this is more the positive component of this, I've had lots of couples in my office who also said, it's been wonderful that the aging process has slowed down my partner because now he and she needs more foreplay and we get to have more tenderness. We get to have more kissing. We get to have more touching. I'm such a lucky person that my partner now needs more time and that what age has done is made him a better lover. That's the wonderful part about aging. Aging, when handled appropriately, will bring the two of you closer together, have you have a more exciting, intimate life, and one in which both of you feel more loved. What I hope more than anything that this podcast episode has done is open up a dialogue between the two of you, talking about aging, talking about getting older, talking about how to keep your sex life active through the years, through many, many, many years, and hopefully the two of you will be together for a very long time, and not allowing any physical issues, chronic illness, other types of medical diagnoses that potentially can get in the way of two people having an active sex life stop you, because you're in this world together, working together to keeping your physical, emotional, and sexual life very much alive. Take care, have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye now, and of course, please stay connected.
Thank you for listening. This episode has ended, but your journey continues. Head over to www.thecouplesexperts.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in this episode, as well as bonus content exclusive to podcast listeners. Enjoyed this episode? Why not hit subscribe now and never miss an episode?